Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you have a fixed amount of time each day for all your media and entertainment. New research suggests it's about 6 hours. But where is that time really going? And, who's winning the battle for your attention? And beyond just attention, what about your wallet? And even how you get your news? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the profound shifts happening in the digital media landscape. Specifically, how social platforms are becoming this dominant force in media, entertainment, and advertising, maybe even disruptive.
Yeah, absolutely. And our mission today is really to pull out the most important nuggets from a stack of pretty compelling sources. We've got Deloitte, Talker Research, Globe Newswire, and even the Harvard Kennedy School Misinformation Review. We want to understand not just what is changing, but crucially, why it matters to you, whether you're, a consumer, an advertiser, or just someone living in this evolving society.
And what's becoming crystal clear from these sources is, well, the competition for your time and money. It's tougher than ever. It's coming from what one source calls hyperscale and hypercapitalized social video platforms. Think about companies with just immense resources, global reach. They can outspend and out-innovate traditional players. It's really not just the old studios competing with each other anymore. It feels like a whole new ballgame.
It really is. And what's truly fascinating here is the sheer fragmentation. Those 6 hours of daily media time, they're now splintered, just split across frankly, a dizzying array of options. You've got streaming video on demand, SVOD services. Then there's user-generated content, UGC, stuff made by regular people, not big studios,
Right.
social platforms, obviously. Gaming, music, podcasts, so much more. And this makes it incredibly challenging for everyone from major studios to small creators to really capture and hold your attention.
Okay, so let's dig into this then. That 6 hour number itself, you're just saying it isn't actually growing. But the mix of how people spend it, that's dramatically changing. What's driving that shift?
Absolutely. There's a really clear generational divide in how media is consumed. So while the average American still spends about 6 hours daily with media, Gen Z leads the pack. They're clocking in an average of 6.6 hours per day. And get this, 11% of Gen Z, compared to just 8% of all respondents, consume 15 or more hours of media daily.
15 hours. Wow.
Yeah. It reflects this broader trend. Consumer preferences are moving away from traditional pay TV and, decisively towards streaming, social video, and gaming. Device usage is a huge part of this, too. While TV still accounts for, 43% of media consumption time, phones are catching up fast. They're at 22.5% share. But for Gen Z, phones are already their primary medium. It's accounting for a significant 31.6% of their daily media diet.
That's a huge shift in habits, a massive change. So given all this, what are the broader implications, like for what we even consider entertainment and where we look for it?
Well, it means we're witnessing the continued, pretty rapid decline of traditional pay TV. Only 49% of consumers surveyed now have a cable or satellite TV subscription. That's a notable drop from 63% just 3 years ago.
It's 3 years. Okay. And the main reasons people still cling to these services, it's mostly live news, that's 43%, and sports at 41%. But, and this is key, social media now provides free sports clips, news recaps, and even the streaming services, the SVODs, are increasingly offering live sports options, so they're effectively eroding those traditional strongholds.
Right, eating away at the core reasons to subscribe.
Exactly. And cost is a massive factor here. The average cable bill is pretty hefty, $125 per month, which is significantly higher than the $69 subscribers report spending for, say, 4 paid streaming services combined. So unsurprisingly, younger generations are the most likely to cut the cord. We see 23% of Gen Z and 18% of millennials planning to terminate their subscriptions within the next 12 months. Okay, so the story starts with a sort of crumbling of traditional pay TV. You just can't compete on flexibility or perceived value anymore. But then the plot thickens, right? Because streaming, which once seemed like the budget savior, is now facing its own reckoning, isn't it? Are these services really heading for their own pricing pandemic?
They certainly seem to be, yeah. While 53% of consumers surveyed say SVOD services are the paid media they use most frequently, there's definitely growing dissatisfaction. 41% now say the content available just isn't worth the price. That's up 5 points from last year.
5 points in 1 year, okay.
And 47% feel they pay too much. The average cost for 4 paid SVOD services, it's risen 13% in the past year to $69 per month overall. And for Gen Z and millennials, it's a substantial 20% increase.
20%.
Yeah. And consumers are quite clear on pricing. They indicate that about $14 is just the right price for an ad-free subscription to their favorite service. But $25, that's deemed too expensive.
So there's a ceiling.
A very clear one. And this isn't just, grumbling about rising prices. It's a critical point of consumer resistance.
Right.
We're seeing what you called a pricing pandemic, where even a small hike like $5 would make the majority 60% of consumers likely to cancel their favorite service. It just highlights how razor thin that perceived value is, especially when people have so many options and are feeling the economic pinch elsewhere.
And this leads to what's often called churn and return.
Yeah.
Subscribing, canceling, maybe resubscribing later when a show you like comes back. How prevalent is this churn, and what's the real impact on these streaming providers?
Oh, it's incredibly prevalent. 39% of consumers said they've canceled at least one paid SVOD service in just the last 6 months, and that rate's been pretty stable, but it jumps to over 50% for both Gen Z and millennials.
Over half.
Yeah, and that churn and return phenomenon itself, also stable at 24% overall, but it rises to 40% for Gen Z and 35% for millennials. So it's not just a minor nuisance for these companies, it's a significant financial drain. Acquiring a new subscriber is already costly, right? But reacquiring someone who's churned adds even more expense and, frankly, uncertainty.
More cost, less predictability.
Exactly. And it's also crucial to connect this to broader consumer financial pressures. The median household income in the U.S. is about $80,000. And about half of U.S. households say they have basically no money left over at the end of the month after meeting expenses.
Tight budgets.
Very tight. And that understandably shifts household spending priorities away from, discretionary things like entertainment.
Okay, so if consumers are feeling that pinch on subscriptions, it makes sense that traditional studios are looking hard for other revenue streams. And it really seems like advertising is where the main battle is being waged now, right? With social platforms having this massive edge. Does this mean ad-supported models are just the new normal?
That's precisely right. We're seeing a huge widespread shift to ad-supported models. More than half of SVOD subscribers, 54% actually, now have at least one ad-supported service. That's an increase of 8 percentage points just since last year.
8 points, wow. Quick adoption.
Very quick. And the average monthly cost for these ad-supported tiers, it sits around $9, which interestingly aligns almost perfectly with what consumers told us was their just right price of $10 in exchange for watching about 8 minutes of ads per hour.
So the price point works.
It seems to hit the sweet spot. And it's also notable that free ad-supported TV or FAST services, basically streaming channels with ads, they're subscribed to by more than 2/3 of younger generations. Though it's worth mentioning, many respondents also report frustration with too much repetition of ads on streaming and cable. So it's not perfect.
Right. The ad experience itself still matters. But the effectiveness, that's a striking contrast you mentioned. It's not just about where the ads are, but how effective they seem to be on social. What gives social platforms this distinct advantage when it comes to actually influencing what people buy?
Yeah, the data's pretty stark. Social platforms now draw over half of all U.S. ad spending.
Over half.
Over half. And they are far more influential for purchasing decisions. Get this. 63% of Gen Z and 49% of millennials say ads or product reviews on social media are most influential to their purchasing decisions. Compare that to a distant second for streaming video ads. That's only 28% and 25% respectively.
Huge gap.
Massive. Additionally, 54% of these younger generations surveyed say that social media ads are simply more relevant to them than ads on streaming or cable TV.
Okay, so why? What's the secret sauce?
It's largely down to their technological edge.
Yeah.
Leading social platforms are just built for advertising. They leverage the same really sophisticated engines they use to deliver relevant content to users. And this is all being boosted by accelerating spending on artificial intelligence.
AI is powering the ad relevance.
Absolutely. Look at the programmatic advertising market. That's the automated, data-driven way ads are bought and placed. It's projected for just explosive growth from about US $23.5 billion this year to an astonishing US $235.7 billion by 2033.
Whoa, wait, say that again. From 23 billion to?
$235 billion. That's a compound annual growth rate of over 29%.
Incredible growth.
It really is. Driven by digital ad spending, the demand for really specific targeting, and these advancements in AI and machine learning. And the key players here, no surprise, Alphabet, which is Google, Meta, Facebook, Amazon. This data-driven personalization lets advertisers buy ads and target very specific groups, specific cohorts, with clear, measurable results. That's something traditional media just struggles to match at that scale and precision.
Okay, that programmatic advertising figure is staggering. But what feels truly disruptive about this trend, maybe even more so, it's not just what people are watching, but who they're watching. These connections they're forming with creators. This really hints at a fundamental shift in, like, the very nature of celebrity, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. We're seeing a really significant shift in the relevance of content itself. 56% of Gen Z and 43% of millennials surveyed report that social media content is actually more relevant to them than traditional stuff like TV shows and movies.
More relevant than movies, okay.
Yeah. And Gen Z, for instance, spends 54% more time, that's about 50 minutes more per day, than the average consumer on social platforms and watching user-generated content. And correspondingly, 26% less time, about 44 minutes less per day, watching traditional TV and movies.
So they're swapping out traditional viewing time for UGC and social.
Exactly. And this highlights the growing influence of creators. A majority of younger generations say creators' videos are their favorite types of videos on social media. And roughly half of Gen Z and millennials surveyed also feel a stronger personal connection to social media creators than they do with, say, TV personalities or actors.
A stronger connection. Interesting.
Yeah, this can lead to what researchers call parasocial relationships. It's where viewers feel this one-sided, almost personal connection with a creator, like their friends, which, deeply invests them and keeps them coming back. And what's more, creators often offer more perceived credibility and authenticity to brands and advertisers.
Why that authenticity factor?
Precisely. This really points to a, quote, deeper cultural shift, where the very definition and value of celebrity are changing. Younger generations often prefer these authentic, independent creators over traditional mainstream celebrities, who can sometimes be perceived as distant or, less relatable.
That's a powerful transformation. So if these individual creators are becoming the new tastemakers, what does this all mean for how content gets discovered? And maybe more importantly, how do traditional studios adapt to stay relevant in this creator-led world?
It means that discovery is increasingly happening on social media, not necessarily through traditional marketing. 56% of younger generations surveyed watch TV shows or movies on streaming after hearing about them from creators online.
So creators are driving viewers to streaming.
They really are. And 53% say they actually get better recommendations on what to watch from social media than from the streaming platforms themselves. There's also this growing recognition, as one source puts it, that the fear that short form doesn't work for premium IP may be mislaid.
Meaning short clips can promote longer shows.
Exactly. Studios should get creative, publish to social platforms. Social video can genuinely help lift TV and movies. And we're starting to see some traditional studios distributing their programming or clips of it on top social video platforms. They're recognizing that creators can be their strongest advocates, the keys to unlocking virality and, shaping culture. But all this change, it raises an important question, doesn't it? How are these really rapid shifts in media consumption affecting our own habits, our attention, even how we process information?
That's a critical point. Our attention spans. They're definitely changing, aren't they? With so much short-form content bombarding us, how is that actually measured? Like, what does the data show?
Yeah, they are changing. It's interesting because when we talk specifically about attention to short-form social media content, like a TikTok, an Instagram Reel, a YouTube Short, the average respondent will lose interest and move on after just 26.1 seconds.
Wow, under 30 seconds.
Yeah. But curiously, Gen Z reported having the longest attention span for this specific kind of short-form content at 34.8 seconds, while baby boomers and the silent generation showed the least patience there.
Huh, okay. So Gen Z is better at watching short videos.
It seems so for that specific format. But what's maybe more telling is the overall reported attention span, like how long someone feels they can focus on consuming any media before needing a break. Here, younger Americans actually report shorter durations. Gen Z averages about 40.4 minutes. Compare that to almost 49 minutes for baby boomers.
Okay, so shorter overall focus, even if they tolerate quick videos long.
That seems to be the implication. It's not just about how long they watch one video, but maybe their general capacity for sustained media engagement is different. And device usage is just incredibly ubiquitous. 57% of respondents are double screening.
Meaning phone in hand while the TV's on.
Exactly. Phone in hand, scrolling while watching something else. And bed scrolling is a really common habit. 55% of all respondents always or often scroll through their phone before going to sleep. That jumps to 79% for Gen Z and 69% for millennials.
That's 80% of Gen Z.
Yeah. And additionally, 40% always or often scroll before even getting out of bed in the morning. That's 64% of Gen Z, 53% of millennials. It almost sounds like our phones are becoming, an extension of our beds for many people.
It really does.
And when asked directly, Gen Z was the most likely group to agree that they consume too much media. 66% said yes, and 52% of them agree that their mood is often negatively affected by social media.
Hmm. Okay, so if our attention is fragmenting and we're consuming more of this like bite-sized content, this raises a really crucial question about the quality of information we're getting, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How do these new consumption patterns, especially this shift to social platforms for news updates and clips, how does that affect our ability to discern truth? And how does maybe concern about misinformation play into our media choices?
Yeah, this is a really critical and complex area. Research from the Harvard Kennedy School Misinformation Review sheds some light here. It shows that concern about misinformation actually varies quite a bit across demographic groups. Democrats, older people, and people with higher levels of education tend to be more concerned than their Republican, younger, and less educated counterparts.
Okay, so concern isn't uniform.
Not at all. And this concern appears to influence media choices, particularly for Democrats. Studies show a positive correlation, meaning as concern goes up, so does usage between higher misinformation concern and increased use of politically aligned, liberal-leaning news sources. Think MSNBC or the New York Times among Democrats.
So being worried about fake news makes them seek out news sources they trust more on their side.
That's what the data suggests. Longitudinal studies over time specifically found that Democrats who were more concerned with misinformation at one point, well, they both sought more politically aligned media and actively avoided politically misaligned sources, like Breitbart News or Fox News, at a later time.
Interesting. So it reinforces their existing preferences.
The research suggests that raising citizens' concern with misinformation may actually contribute to increased polarization in media use, at least among Democrats in this study. And it's important to note their perceived ability to distinguish between true and fake news didn't seem to decrease this association. Feeling confident you can spot fakes didn't change the behavior.
Huh.
And maybe on a broader societal level, exposure to what the researchers call alarmist discourse in media coverage about misinformation, that itself can create a heightened perception of threat and potentially decrease general trust in the media overall.
Right. So, wow. What we've really uncovered today points to a media landscape just in rapid, almost constant transformation. We've got this fixed amount of entertainment time, but a dramatically evolving value equation for paid services. People are really questioning the cost. Then there's the undeniable growing power of social platforms, both in advertising where they dominate, and increasingly in content creation and discovery through creators. And all this has a nuanced impact on us, on our attention, how we consume information, including this complex role of misinformation concern potentially driving polarization.
Exactly. The broader implications are pretty clear. The media landscape is just in constant flux. It's being profoundly shaped by consumer behavior, these incredible technological advancements like AI, and, of course, economic pressures. For traditional studios, there's this real imperative now to innovate and adapt and do it quickly. They need to leverage AI, build strategic partnerships, maybe embrace creators more, or they genuinely risk losing an entire generation of viewers.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. If media is truly no longer a homogeneous monolith, as one source described it, and younger generations especially are increasingly defining their own unique media diets, often through social media and creators, what does this mean for the future of, say, shared cultural experiences, those water cooler moments we used to all talk about? And maybe more profoundly, how might society agree on a common set of facts when our information consumption pathways are becoming so personalized, so fragmented, and potentially siloed? We've taken a deep dive into these trends today, pulled out some key data points. But what stands out to you as you navigate this rapidly changing media landscape yourself? Someone to think about.